Hello, and welcome to another edition of Biblical Exegesis Practicum Online with Life Pacific University. Today we're going to be talking about writing the message of a passage. The problem that a lot of people have when writing their message is they try to be unique or surprising or something like that. You want to be explicit, and so your introduction paragraph, for instance, needs to set up your reader to know exactly what the essay is going to be. You need to have a clear thesis, which explicitly says the message of this passage is whatever the message is, and then you need to break that out in the body of your essay, and then your conclusion is basically your introduction in reverse. Instead of saying this is what I'm going to be talking about, you summarize what you have talked about. And this is even good in presentational communication. When you're preaching a sermon, it's good to say today's sermon is going to be about, we're going to cover these passages and these topics, and then at the end of the sermon you review and say, today we've talked about this passage and these topics, and it helps your reader to kind of absorb that information. So in your opening paragraph, as you can see, you need a general introduction to the topic, a general description of the nature of the essay, and basically what you're doing here is explaining what you are and what you are not covering, right? So this is just establishing expectations for your reader, so that they're aware of the ground you're covering and they're not expecting anything beyond that. Basic description of the structure of the passage, which will basically be the structure of your essay, because you're going to be explaining structurally through the passage. And then, as I said, identified a clear thesis statement on the message of the passage. And so you're going to defend that in the body. The body, the how of the interpretive message is going to deal with the function of the passage itself. And so in our instance, in Luke 15, we're going to be dealing with the general nature and function of Jesus' parables. You've got plenty of information from the reading for that. You can also use the video from the Bible Project that I added to this playlist last week for information on that. You also have historical and cultural dimensions. Those are going to be necessary for you to cover from probably your textbook, but also from any other reading that you do. Like earlier in this worksheet, you have reading on clean and unclean, Pharisees and table fellowship. So you have to pick two of those to read, and so those may be helpful for you. And then the literary setting also helps to explain the purpose of this passage. And so what we're dealing with there is the overall context, like what are the passages ahead of Luke 15, what are the passages after Luke 15. And then Jesus' audience in the parable, I talked about that in our last video a little bit, that he's addressing the people who are basically judging him for being in fellowship with these quote-unquote sinners. And then the use and significance of Genesis 33. We talked about that a little bit in the last video, and so you can use that video and information from that to kind of shore up this section. And then the second part of the body is the what of the interpretive message. And so this is basically bringing everything together to explain the overall message of the passage. This is laying out an explicit interpretation of how Jesus uses these parables to confront and challenge his audience. So what you want to do here is walk through each of the three parables, lost sheep, lost coin, lost son, and explain how they're related to one another. So for instance, Pharisees are fond of temple sacrifices. Well, a sheep might be useful in temple sacrifices. A coin might be useful in offering in a temple. And Jesus is contrasting that with the fact that they are not seeing their fellow man as useful, right? That any of them, if they had a lost sheep, they would go find it. If any of them had a lost coin, that they would go find it. But if they had a lost son, they may or may not, based on how they're treating their fellow Israelite. And so Those are the kind of things that you want to tease out there. And then you want to do one page on an application to your personal life and vocation in the church. This basically is just your time to say, in studying this passage and reading this passage and in writing this paper, here's what this has done for me personally in my life with Christ. And so this is where application is totally okay, first person pronouns totally okay, all of that stuff, right? So hopefully this has been helpful. We'll talk a little bit more about how to write the message next week. Talk a little bit more about New Testament's use of the Old Testament as well next week. And we'll start working on 1 Timothy 2 then. So until then, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm here for you. And we'll see your assignments here soon. Thanks so much.